Welcome to the Bantams Debrief. This is the Bantams online YouTube channel. You can follow me on X at Bantams Online. This is covering the open letter written by Stefan Rupp. Coincidentally, a day before the protests wanting him and Ryan Sparks out of the club are taking place. They will still go ahead, by the way, and make sure you do get yourself down there. It will be taking place at 2 o'clock in the afternoon outside the main stand. Now, the meet-up will be from 1:30 in the afternoon, and our behaviour is really, really important, so please, no pyros. I don't need to tell you guys this because I know that you don't need telling. Obviously, make sure there's space for people to enter the ground, and we're not getting in people's way in that way, but we must make our voices heard still, even though we've had an open letter from Stefan Rupp. And I just want to first of all take us to the Telegraph and Argus, because Simon Parker has managed to piss me off twice in one day. One of the things I want to show you is the way he is seemingly pushing this narrative of a toxic fan base by what he said in a press conference with Graham Alexander. People like Louis Reynolds were talking about the protests. Simon Parker wanted to phrase it in a way that made it look like fans are being unreasonable and used the abuse word. Not a word that Graham Alexander used himself, I just want to make clear, but he for some reason saw fit to include it in his article, just so you can see for yourself. I will show you where. It's a little bit of trickery where you put your own opinion where there's no quotations, and what happens is people read it and just assume that's part of what Graham Alexander's said, but he hasn't. Graham Alexander has thrown his support behind Ryan Sparks as the City Chief Executive, faces mounting anger from fans. First of all, he's wrong with this. City's shocking recent form has triggered the frustration. No, it hasn't. It's a long-term thing that's been going on about the running of the club. Here's where he says, but the Bantams boss understands how hard it can be to deal with the abuse. Not once does Graham Alexander call it abuse. That's words that Simon Parker has used. My problem with it is it pushes the toxic fans narrative. Now, what Simon Parker doesn't put up in headlines is this little bit, where Graham Alexander did actually say, there are tough times in life and you have to understand that they will come, especially if you want to be in professional sports. If things aren't going right on the pitch, then someone's getting it, Graham Alexander said. That's not bespoke and unique to Bradford City. That's throughout my 35 years in professional football. Someone's getting it. Sometimes a player, sometimes it's a manager, sometimes it's the people above that. It's not bespoke to Bradford City. Bradford City do not have a toxic fan base. This is what happens in football. People want accountability. And yes, it happens. And Graham Alexander rightly points that out. Why isn't Simon Parker saying, oh, it's not just Bradford City fans, it's all fans that will have a go at people. Instead, he chooses to use himself, a word, again, that I want to say was never used by Graham Alexander in his press conference. He never, ever used the word abuse. And there's a misconception going around that Ryan Sparks is getting a load of abuse. Ryan Sparks is being held accountable and isn't dealing with it very well. Somebody's either deliberately, or they don't understand the difference, conflating abuse with accountability. And that is my big problem with the people who are backing Ryan Sparks, because they're all saying very similar things. And when you've got people that are commenting on Simon Parker's articles that suggest that Simon Parker has been told what to write, no, I don't necessarily say he's been told what to write, but he's certainly been influenced. Because all of the same people who seem to get very offended when anything that isn't a compliment is said about Ryan Sparks are all using the same kind of language. It's almost word for word. Yesterday I'm hearing the same people talk about, oh, that's a conspiracy. I had one podcaster say it, conspiracies, about something that a former pro has said in his own words. That is not a conspiracy, that is a fact. And this kind of language of abuse. Well, what about the abuse that the people who have been calling for Rupp to resign and Sparks to resign, even when they weren't? I've experienced it myself. We're getting abuse, personal abuse, from people backing Ryan Sparks. So let's not get dragged into this myth that it's loads of abuse that Ryan Sparks is having a problem with. It's not. This very much seems to be a conflation between abuse and accountability. As we go with any football fans, with any society, community, anything like that, there will always be one or two people who will take things too far. But that does not reflect on the people who want accountability. That's not how it works in real life. Just because you might not like what they've got to say doesn't make it abuse. I wanted to start off with Simon Parker as an example because he does put some interesting things, little throwaway comments in there that he likes to add. And the open letter, Stefan Rupp has today issued an open letter to City fans amid growing concerns about the club's direction. The owner broke his silence to apologise for the poor season and pledged to provide a more competitive budget next time. God, that's a season ticket one, isn't it? A more competitive budget. There are also plans to boost the football department, which I suspect could be a director of football. Rupp has promised to be more communicative, something he has been heavily criticised for, or lack of. The announcement follows, and this is a bit I liked. The announcement follows crunch talks with Ryan Sparks yesterday, right, keyword, after the chief executive flew out to Germany. Sparks had been pressing, wait for it guys, Sparks had been pressing for a sit-down meeting for ages, yeah? Since Rupp's brief trip to Valley Parade recently when he watched the team get thumped 5-1 by Mansfield, you're talking over a week ago. So this has all been going on for years, right? Yeah, it's come to a head with the protests, but this has been going on for a very, 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 very long time. If you just want to take it back to that Christmas time, that January, when the BBC were trying to get him to have a fans forum and we had a fans forum without any fans. It's been going on for more than just suddenly deciding in the last week that now's the time for a sit-down meeting. The problem is, and this is why Ryan Sparks still needs to go, everything comes down to being about Ryan Sparks. Why is Ryan Sparks now, after his owner comes over from Germany to see a 5-1 defeat, half of the fans leave before half-time, people shouting at the owner because they're totally fed up with how the club's been run. Why has that suddenly made Ryan Sparks go, shit, I need to get over and have a sit-down meeting with Stefan Rupp, the person who hires me and pays my wages? Because, as usual, everything's about narrative, and that's very understandable from somebody who has a media background like Ryan Sparks. It's about, let's get this narrative sorted. So he's able to say, possibly push a lot of the blame onto Stefan Rupp for how we haven't got a competitive budget, which I thought we did, to take the heat off of himself. Because as an owner, just think you're looking at it, you've been to see it for the first time in ages with your own eyes, and how pissed off the fans are and how awful the pitch is and how terrible things are. What's the first thing you're most likely to think of doing to fix this problem? Sack your CEO by any chance? Especially when you know he's not that experienced. I'd say it's most certainly something I'd have in the back of my mind if I was Ryan Sparks. So I'd be desperate to get a sit-down meeting with Stefan Rupp too and be able to put my side of the story forward and try and look at ways that we can fix things to stop the fans complaining. And naturally, we've got a perfectly timed open letter from Stefan Rupp for Ryan Sparks. He needs to go. And that'll be my first sign that Stefan Rupp's actually doing anything. But anyway, let's get to this letter. Dear supporters, this season has not been good enough. There is not one single person connected to this club, including myself, who feels differently. Again, this very much is a Ryan Sparks narrative. It's not about this season. Reaching the playoffs and losing in the semi-finals, contrary to what Ryan Sparks has said, is not a success. So it's not this season that's not been good enough. It has consistently not been good enough since Stefan Rupp took over, and it has not been good enough, certainly, since Ryan Sparks has become CEO. But everything is getting boiled down into this short time frame to suit that narrative, kind of to say fickle fans. The last 2 weeks have been hugely disappointing. We have allowed our season to fall away only weeks after being minutes from Wembley, losing our second semi-final fixture in 9 months. This was hard to take for us all. Again, emphasis being put on Wembley, being close to getting to Wembley and being in semi-finals. But again, this feels very Ryan Sparks. His narrative, and it is things he has talked about a lot. So it's hard not to, it's not exactly just conspiracy. We're not getting this from nowhere. I'm not just imagining that Ryan Sparks might have said this, because it's exactly what he said to us. So to hear from Stefan Rupp saying this after a meeting with Ryan Sparks, it's not too unreasonable a conclusion to assume that this is how Ryan Sparks has sold it to Stefan Rupp, and I wouldn't be too surprised as a media person whether Ryan Sparks hasn't been somewhat involved with the writing of this. I'm not saying all of it, but I'm just saying he'd have had a look over it, made a few suggestions. You would imagine that this isn't a first draft. Last week, Ryan Sparks requested to meet me in Germany to address a number of topics concerning him, both in the short and long term. Ryan flew to Munich yesterday, Wednesday, and we openly discussed where we find ourselves now, how we got here, and how do we not wish to find ourselves in this position again. Ryan expressed his concerns around our budget and the relative budgets of other clubs that are likely to be on the table in League 2 next season, including those of teams being relegated from League 1 and being promoted from the National League. I'll stop there for a minute because this is something, again, that was a conversation for last season when Wrexham were coming up, Notts County are coming up and the team's going down. Last season we saw this. We all saw it before going, well, hang on a minute, our competitive budget ain't going to be as competitive with the likes of those teams coming up, and they're the big hitters. Yes, Chesterfield have quite a good budget themselves, but they're not Wrexham, so that is a year late. Why wasn't he saying it then? Again, it comes back to why has it suddenly happened after that 5-1 defeat? Is it now somebody thinks a job's on the line that it is an issue? We began the summer ahead of this season with a competitive budget based on the current model, which we hope could deliver playoff football. Again, same point. However, as the better resource clubs continued to spend, it is clear our budget became less competitive. Again, same point. This is something most of us saw when we saw who got promoted from the National League. We knew this. But this is a big part of the problem of how Ryan Sparks runs a club. It's always reactive, never proactive. We saw that coming a mile off. We've also been able to say about contracts for players. Why not get that done in advance? Yet we have to go to the end of the season where we'll inevitably lose players that we want to keep, just like we did with Paddy O'Connor and Charles Vernam, and we won't have learnt anything. Always reactive, never proactive to things we can already see. So we saw this coming, and this should have been really what Stefan Rupp was saying to us a year ago when we lost to Carlisle United. This should have come then. I pledge my support to ensure we are now able to compete in the transfer market, giving us a greater chance of having a closer fight with teams at the top end of the table next season. I'd like to find out in terms of finances what this means. What will Stefan Rupp be investing into the wage budget or transfer budget in order for us to compete? Because in order for us to compete, we need to be able to buy players that are already in contract at other clubs who are doing a great job there. Not just find players who are out of contract and get them on free transfers. Also, what we need to do is have money available for renegotiating contracts with players such as Brad Halliday, Bobby Poynton, and players like that, rather than leaving it till the end of the season. And that is something that's not addressed in this letter. Anyway, I'll continue. I gave Ryan clear direction to run our club as close to break even as possible. However, I recognise this can have its limitations, and we must, to some degree, move away from an approach where our primary objective is sustainability in order to achieve our goals without placing financial strain on the business. When needed, I have always financially supported the club, though I accept this support will need to go further, and Ryan and I are on the same page with regards to the investment required. Funnily enough, again, there's a little bit of Ryan Sparks now going, well, I want to place all the blame on the owner. It's an interesting strategy, is this, because sustainability I can understand, but there's only so far we can go with sustainability. Sometimes it does require an owner to get involved and say, right, I'm going to speculate to accumulate. And again, we've got the issues of contract negotiations. And also, may I add, Ryan Sparks' ego when it comes to saying that what somebody might be saying on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, is having a negative impact on negotiations with the transfer of a player. That isn't Stefan Rupp's fault. That's Ryan Sparks. And also, the decision to renegotiate contracts in May rather than doing it earlier in the season, that is not down to sustainability. That is down to Ryan Sparks. He's made it clear. I'd actually have an argument supporting Ryan Sparks on this if he hadn't already made it clear himself that it's his decision to leave it till the end of the season and negotiate these things. Because that is not a sustainable way of running a football club. That actually contradicts what he's saying we're doing. Because sustainability, part of that strategy is to get players that you buy and then sell on for profit. So, first of all, we talk about a young player, which is our bread and butter, selling these young players. Sometimes it gets 100, 250 grand. It can be quite lucrative. It could be more. We've seen it with other players who have left the club and they've not even made first team appearances for the clubs they're at. So, in any way, saying that negotiations over a young player like that is being affected by what's being said on social media flies in the face of that sustainability. That is putting your ego before sustainability, because we're talking about a top flight football club with finances that we need the money from to be sustainable. So rather than us threatening them about how their people are going about their business, we need to suck it up a little bit and go, right, okay, but as long as you're paying X amount of money for a player, we don't mind. So he's risking that sustainability, risking a deal of a young player. So that's not being sustainable, is it? That's being hostage to his ego, really. And then we look at players like Brad Halliday, Matty Platt, Bobby Poynton. As it's been said, most, if not all, players that have signed for Bradford City have an option to extend by a year on the contract. So that covered Brad Halliday, yeah? Matty Platt, for instance, he's a defender that hasn't got that option on his contract. Now, we could have said in January, right, we're going to pay you a bit extra and we want you to sign a new 2-year deal with him, fully with the intention of selling him in the summer. But what we've done is making the same mistake we made with Paddy O'Connor and Charles Vernam, where we get to the summer, start negotiations, and League One teams come, pick them up for free. We get nothing out of it. You'd think we'd have learnt that lesson and gone, actually, what we need to do is get players like that signed up with contract extensions in January or before that even. We know the good players. We know they're going to be teams that are higher up than us are going to want to sign. So in that case, if we get them on a new contract, yes, it's going to cost us a little bit more per week. We can make that money back and a lot on top by selling the player rather than just letting them go free. But no, here we are again. Ryan Sparks has openly admitted that it's his decision to leave these things till the summer. And then, okay, let's say Brad Halliday extends because it's already in his contract. Next season, we've got the exact same problem. You're going to have League One clubs lining up for him and he's going to go on a free transfer. We could have made 100 grand out of him. The same will happen with Matty Platt in the summer. And then Bobby Poynton even. You know, that's not sustainability. That's stupidity. So if you're going to be sustainable, but you can't be like then leaving out important bits of the sustainable objective by going, oh, I'll leave it till the summer because I think that's best. It doesn't fit with the strategy in air quotes. I could have argued, this was my point, I could have argued in Ryan Sparks' favour, had Ryan Sparks not said it's his decision to do this, that because Stefan Rupp refuses to increase that budget by any amount, we're unable to offer new contracts to players before the end of the season because we've got X amount of money for this season, X amount of money for next season. So if we're at the limit of our budget and we increase so-and-so's, say, Brad Halliday or Matty Platt's wages by 500 quid, 1,000 quid a week, then we can't physically afford to do it because Stefan Rupp will not allow an increase in the budget to be an extra 1,500, 2,000 a week. But that's not the case, as Ryan Sparks has pointed, said it's his decision. So I can't blame Stefan Rupp for that one. It's on Ryan Sparks, and there's no business reason for doing it. And it certainly isn't a business reason that fits with sustainability because we're just throwing money away that we could have made. Anyway, it's a long way to go, so I'm going to have to carry on with this. Graham Alexander inherited a team not well placed in the division with just over 1/3 of the season played and has worked tirelessly along with the players and his staff in an attempt to deliver a points per game ratio needed to get the team into the playoffs from where we were. I don't doubt he has. As we have seen, at times, we have been able to string together some impressive results, but consistency has been an issue, and we've not been good enough. We have also suffered significant injuries to hugely influential players at bad times throughout our campaign. This happens to all teams. It's also an issue with recruitment because obviously we've been overloaded in certain positions and we have gaps in certain areas which, as soon as injuries kick in, we do not have people who can step into those positions, namely centre-back, centre-midfield, which again is part of the reason I was against the signing of Tyreek Wright in January, because I felt we needed either a centre midfielder or a centre back to provide cover for that area and be able to keep fitness levels up. But for some reason, not sure why, it was decided the best interest for the club was to get yet another winger, wide player, and we had plenty of them. I don't know whether that's on Graham Alexander or whether it's recruitment or Ryan Sparks or a bit of all three. Who knows? I recognise that over the past 6 months in particular, I have not been present enough and have been too quiet. For that, I apologise. Again, we're trying to micro-focus a little bit here because it's been more than just 6 months he's not been in contact. Granted, in the past 6 months, you could, I suppose, count his For the Doubters finger Instagram post as communication with the fans. Probably best not to put too much focus on that as communication. It's been a lot more than 6 months. I know he's used the word in particular, but there's nothing particularly different between the last 6 months and really the last 5 or 6 years. My intention going forward is to be more visible, and I will communicate more regularly with you to ensure you are kept updated on our plans for the club's future. I have been made aware of the various topics that matter most to you, and I intend to cover them more openly, regularly, and clearly. Although, as you can appreciate, some subjects are confidential and must be kept private for obvious reasons. Yep, absolutely understand that. But I will expect him to be answering questions. Maybe now, if he wants to prove this point, that he is intending on being more visible and communicating more regularly, maybe now is the time to commit to a fans forum. So get that in early. I'm committing to a fans forum. The date is to be announced. That's fine. Commit to it and show some action rather than it just being words, because we've heard these words before. I'm acutely aware our current rental agreement at the University of Bradford Stadium, Valley Parade, is not far from coming to an end. I'm considering all of our options to ensure the most favourable outcomes for the club in the long term, to safeguard its finances, even if that comes at a cost to me. This is how I see matters for this club as a whole. This was a massive issue when Mark Lawn and Julian Rhodes were joint chairman. There were threats to move to Odsal, and this really, really needs... I think it requires Bradford Bulls and Bradford City to get together on this matter, and the Bradford Council, because it's all well and good. The council, they like to, like with the City of Culture thing, approach Bradford City for publicity and stuff like that, but they're not doing anything for the football clubs that bring all the attention to Bradford, or the rugby clubs. When Bradford Bulls were in the Super League, a lot of attention and focus was on them. Obviously, when we were in the Premier League, and since we got to the EFL Cup final, which saw unprecedented levels of focus on Bradford. That's what your sports club do for a city. So we really, really need to be part of pressuring Bradford Council about this, and we need to be putting something forward. Buying the ground is one answer, but this is a really tough one to negotiate, because it's all well and good Ryan Sparks going, we've got great relations with Gordon Gibb now. It's not about that, it's about business. Yes, Gordon Gibb will probably be your best friend if he thinks you're going to sign the same deal again, because it's in his interests. Whilst Mark Lawn was at the club, there was hardball, threats to leave, to go to Wadsall, which would then mean Gordon Gibb would have nothing worth anything really in his pension fund, because that ground's no use to anybody without anybody renting it. So a lot of hard talks have to be underway, and I would imagine a lot of communication with Bradford City fans will be essential to that. But just saying, we've got a sponsorship deal with Flamingo Land, and that doesn't point to this situation being resolved in a way that protects the future of the football club. that just says that everyone's happy while there's a chance that Gordon Gibb is going to get what he wants. I want you to feel and experience less disappointment and fewer opportunities passed up to make finals and win promotion. Some of these moments have perhaps been particularly demoralising for our hugely talented staff who work extremely hard behind the scenes to ensure we can operate as efficiently and as sustainably as possible. Really not doing you any favour putting that word in. Just reeks of Ryan Sparks. I understand the expectation placed upon this club and I am responsible for starting to deliver on that. This club has spent far too many years in League Two, both in recent times and prior to my involvement. Nice little way of sort of saying you've always been a League Two, League One club, so what you're complaining about. And we are desperate to change that statistic and move back forward where we want to be. Yeah, it sort of is deflected a little bit, trying to say, well, that's what it was like before. We were looking before, without any involvement from Stefan Rupp and Edin Rahic, we, under Phil Parkinson, most likely would have gone up automatically that season to the Championship. I felt that the playoff final was not a success. Losing in the playoff final was actually a failure because without that involvement by the ownership at the time, which then saw Phil Parkinson leave and take everything with him, we were set up to go up to the Championship the next season. There was absolutely no reason we couldn't have gone up automatically. There are often questions tabled to me and Ryan Sparks on my desire to own Bradford City in the long term, and it's important I clear this up for everyone concerned. I, like most owners in the EFL, would and will continue to consider offers from potential buyers who could take Bradford City further than I can, though I would never allow it to fall into the hands of somebody who would harm it. Very well chosen words, again, that never allow it to fall into the hands of someone who would harm it, which ties in nicely with the whole Wagme United argument and stuff like that, although it has to be pointed out, Wagme United, Crawley Town are in the playoff spots at the moment and have been consistently above us in the league table this season. I don't know how much of that, again, is like, you need to get this in, make sure this is said, but it's sort of clear as mud. Are you selling the club? That doesn't sound like somebody who is selling the club, but he will listen, and if the offer's right, yes, he'd be open to selling the club. And when we're saying offer's right, I'm talking about the money that he would want for the club to sell the club. Still no answer to what that figure is. So in your communications, if you're willing to sell the club, how much is the figure that you are looking for that would make you sell the club? And what he would reject, perhaps. Whether he'd reject 5 million for the club. With that said, while I own the club, I want to make my commitment clear that alongside Ryan, Graham and our staff, we intend to drive it forward, that's just words, and bring genuine hope and excitement back to Valley Parade. Words again, it takes actions. This is my stance and it will not change. No, it hasn't changed. You've wanted that since day one. Of course you would as an owner, because it makes your asset more valuable and it also makes for a quieter life as well. Everybody wants that, but what we're saying is it's not being done in the right way, and I'm sorry, but Ryan Sparks is not the right man to be able to carry this through. So you can want all you want, it doesn't mean it's going to happen, and wanting it has been what you've said all along, but look what's happened, the exact opposite. Part of my discussion with Ryan Sparks yesterday concerned the football department, and Ryan expressed a desire to add to that operation and assist our existing staff to achieve better outcomes. Ryan will be able to share more details on this matter before the season ends. I can only conclude from that Ryan Sparks has finally backed down and decided that a director of football would be the safest bet for him, and about time too. And from what he said on the BBC Fans Forum Without Fans, he had considered that, but he decided he didn't need it. So now the pressure's on. He's decided that actually that might take some of the stress or some of the focus off of his inability to run a football club, especially when people say, well, he's good at marketing, so he's doing that well, but just not the football. It's a good get out of jail card for him. And I think it's late in the day. I think had he been serious about that, that should have happened earlier. I know you can't change the past, and he's doing it now, but for me, if this club wants to move forward, Ryan Sparks needs to go. And as far as the commercial side of things go, you've got a lot of supporters don't give themselves enough credit here. We've got a big support base, we've got a big fan base, and that makes us more attractive to businesses because there's a bigger reach of people to get to. And at the moment, Ryan's doing a good job of seeing this dwindle. So is he that great on the commercial side? I'd say it's not necessarily as clear cut as some might imagine. You need to keep your customers happy first and foremost, keep them there, and then the commercial side will develop from there. It's not doing a very good job of that basic, keeping your fans happy. Lack of communication, arrogance, the way fans have been treated is not great. You are passionate about your club, and that is important. Our club, actually, isn't it? You have the right to ask questions, to air concerns and frustrations, and to know how I see things. I would not want us to operate any other way, but we have been. That's exactly how we've been operating. Everyone being on the same page, working towards the same common goal, and having each other's backs will make us stronger. Well, there's a lot of having each other's backs behind the scenes and in the media, with BBC West Yorkshire Sports being the exception of that, who are being very open and honest and doing their bit to back the supporters and make sure the best happens for the club. But yeah, having each other's backs is part of the problem within the football club. That it's an interesting word to use, phrase to use, is that I accept criticism that has come in my direction, and that is very much my responsibility. I am determined not to let people down. I've been doing a lot of thinking since my last visit to Bradford in the defeat at home to Mansfield Town, which was a difficult afternoon and very hard to watch. Results since then have done very little to improve the mood. I, along with yourselves, certainly after our victory at Accrington Stanley, believed we had a real opportunity to make a push for the playoffs. That has since passed us by. It leaves a feeling none of us want to experience in the future, and I am fully motivated to ensure we have better days ahead. Well, this has been the case most seasons. It's nothing new to us. We've got used to this. So, again, it's trying to pin this timeline down to this season, is this kind of narrative, and it's been going on a lot longer than that. This is just the culmination of all of it finally coming out. And again, it seems like that's been ignored within this open letter. Here we go. As we showed last season, when results are better on the field, we can achieve great things when we are united together. Although last season ended in disappointment, in the weeks leading up to our defeat at Carlisle, there were some great moments with incredible scenes at Valley Parade and record-breaking crowds both in the league and playoffs. I want more of those times and memories for us all. And it has been made clear to me what I must do to assist that. Again, it feels very Ryan Sparks, this, because last season was not a success. We didn't achieve great things, and we weren't united together. Many of us saw that us being in the playoffs was in spite of Ryan Sparks and Stefan Rupp, not because of. These issues were there. Just because it was drowned out by the fact we'd reached the playoff semi-finals, and there's a reason people came very quickly down to earth on that, like you wouldn't have expected, because they knew in reality reaching the playoffs was a one-off and it should be the norm. Deep down, fans knew something was off, and that's why there was this backlash, really, to that away match at Carlisle United. That wouldn't ordinarily have occurred when we've reached the playoffs before. In fact, it's not happened when we've lost in the playoffs before. So, again, it's trying to just pinpoint it like everything was fine last season. It wasn't. Far from it. Just we had hired a manager who had a big name that used to manage Manchester City, and that distracted from the real issues. We are set up to fail the way things are going. Doesn't matter who the manager is. So, in this, again, it's pinpointing us, trying to just say it's the last 6 months. No, it's not. And if Ryan Sparks has told you that, he's lying to you. That's just when it's become a story. I understand your frustrations and concerns and share the pain you feel when things do not go our way. I doubt that very much. I hope tomorrow you can pull together and get behind the team as you do, like supporters of no other club can, and I hope the players can begin to wash away some of the feelings that have built up over the past few weeks and deliver a performance on the pitch which they are more than capable of. Well, in that case, we don't need to increase our budget next season, do we? Hopefully we can pick up some positive results as we move towards the end of the season, the summer, and the 2024-25 campaign, which I can assure you we will all give everything towards to ensure it ends how a Bradford City season can and should. Your chairman, Stefan. Well, first of all, I appreciate him finally coming out and communicating with the fans, and a lot of credit for that has to go to the work of the fans that have been patiently plugging away at this for years, because it has been going on for years. A lot of people don't know that, and it's built up and built up. It takes time, and just like with the protests tomorrow that will be going ahead, they take time to build as well. So don't expect 1,000 people out there. You know, if there's 50 or 100 out there, it's a good start, and especially as this well-timed letter has hit the news. But I don't think it changes anything, and we have to bear in mind that if the progress to get him to communicate with fans has taken this long, we need to see actions, not just words now. The time for words is well past. That should have happened a year ago. Now we need to see actions, and we can't be seeing actions take as long as it's taken him to communicate. And unfortunately, I think an important part of that action is still that Ryan Sparks has to go. He either has to resign or Stefan Rupp sacks him. That'll show the first bit of real ambition, that he's willing to invest in a CEO who has got experience in football and the footballing business and can be a CEO of a football club. Not somebody who's promoted from your media guy into the dizzying heights of running a football club. That's just not good enough. And also, that way, Stefan Rupp can show he's not part of the toxic behind the scenes that exists at the football club. And I'm not just using my words for that. Ryan Sparks described it when he first became CEO of the football club. Granted, he was aiming it at Edin Rahic, but I suggest very strongly from what we've seen and what we've heard from Ryan Sparks that has not changed, and Ryan Sparks is part of that problem. And whilst there's a toxic mentality in there, this club will struggle. Throw as much money at it as you like, you're wasting your money. So if you want to show actions first, the first thing you need to do is replace Ryan Sparks, and then we will see some proof that you're not just words, you are taking actions. Announce that Ryan Sparks will be leaving at the end of this season. That'll give you enough chance to find a replacement, and it will make a very big statement that you are a man of action, not a man of words, and very few words. And then some of the gloom and negativity that is surrounding Bradford City can be lifted. But it's a small number of people that are often very, very staunch supporters of Ryan Sparks who are pushing the toxic fans' agenda and blaming the fans for everything. It's time to distance yourself from that, show you're a man of action, and begin by terminating the employment of Ryan Sparks at this football club. And finally, like I say, the default setting would be to continue with the protests for Rupp out and Ryan Sparks out. That is the default setting until we see actions. That is the only way we can go. We cannot be derailed by words. We need to see actions. So we must keep the protests going. But yeah, we need to back the Bradford City Independent Fans Group. And if you're not already a member, it takes 2 seconds to join, by the way, and it doesn't cost anything. And giving them the mandate to show that they've got the backing of the fans, it's something that gives momentum to everybody, including the people running it. Shows that they are appreciated for what they're doing at the very least. And look what they've already achieved. Could you imagine this happening before? No. You know, and the protests coming, all of that, this has shown that the club is worried. The people that are running the club are worried. Shows Ryan Sparks is a bit worried about his own position, and rightly so, and that there's credibility for the protests, and it's not just about the numbers. Give your backing in whatever way you can. Even if you can't make it to the protest, even if you don't feel that protesting is your thing, or we're at a stage where you believe you need to protest, that's fine. But maybe just pop along to the Bradford City Independence Fans Group. I ain't got a horse in this race, by the way. I just think it's worthwhile showing a group that is actually there trying to do things for you. For us, I think it's worthwhile just doing what even just a little thing like that to show, yes, I'm supporting you. And I think the open letter that we've received, that is by fans, is a good reason to say, yeah, they have actually achieved something, and yeah, I can give them my backing. So what I'll do is I'll just pop along and I'll sign up, and I'm going to leave a link to that in the description, so you don't even have to make any effort. Just click the link and it'll take you directly to the page. And I'm going to leave that here anyway. The takeaway is things haven't changed. Yes, we appreciate Stefan Rupp coming out and making a statement, or writing his open letter, but we need actions. We need to see actions before we can move from our default setting of protests and demanding that Stefan Rupp sells the club and Ryan Sparks is sacked or resigns. If we see Ryan Sparks resign or have his contract terminated, that will indicate that things are happening. We're not going to be fooled by a letter that promises but doesn't deliver. It is only fair that we stay with the default setting of keeping this Rupp out, Sparks out going until there is anything that realistically shows that there is a fundamental change at this football club. Thank you to everybody who has bothered watching this. I've bored myself a little bit, so if I bored you, I must apologise. Anyway, if you've got a moment, do hit the like button. Leave a comment, let me know what your thoughts are on this letter and what would you like to see. And also, don't forget to subscribe and follow me on X, where you'll see a lot more about these sort of things. All that's left to say is thanks very much for watching, and I will catch you later.